Airports are built for sameness. That's what Nia Brooks told herself as she pulled a Navy suitcase from the carousel and hurried into the March chill of Atlanta. Barbados still clung to her skin like sunlight, salt in her hair, sand in the hem of her dress. But routine waited. Her tiny apartment, the squeak in the stairwell, the shop called Petal and Stem that smelled like green stem and hope. She didn't notice the sleek metal initials on the handle. She didn't notice the weight difference. She noticed only how much she wanted a shower and sleep. Across the country in a private jet dressed like a boardroom, Cassian Royce didn't notice much either. He was good at not noticing, at skimming the surface of days, letting numbers click by like train tracks. When he opened the suitcase, he expected files, shirts, and the same blue tie publicists said made him look approachable. Instead, a peach scarf, a leather journal worn velvet soft at the corners, a Polaroid of a woman on a beach with her arms thrown wide to the sky. Between the journal pages, pressed petals slept like secrets. For the first time in months, he sat down and simply looked. Nia opened the wrong suitcase the next morning and felt heat crawl up her neck. Crisp shirts, an engraved card case, a portfolio with the name Cassian Royce, the very Cassian from magazine covers and shareholder letters. She reached for her phone to call the airline. It rang first. "Ms. Brooks?" a polite voice asked. "I'm Marcus Chen, Mr. Royce's assistant. There seems to have been a mix-up." A mix-up. Such a tidy phrase for the way her pulse was tripping. They arranged to meet at Four Seasons lobby. No fuss. Nia wore a blue dress that made her feel like a calm she didn't quite have. He looked exactly like the photograph, and nothing like them. Taller, less polished around the edges, as if sleep had been short and truth had been longer. They exchanged bags. Nia apologized twice. He said, "These things happen," in a tone that meant it. She turned to go, relieved and oddly disappointed. "Would you have coffee with me?" he asked, as if he was asking the weather to pause. They sat in the lounge, steam rising from cups, and spoke the way strangers can when a door opens that neither of them expected. He confessed, carefully, that he had opened the journal to find a name. He described the sketch of a tiny counter and an old cooler. "You think about where light falls," he said, "not just where flowers sit." Her breath snagged. People had bought her arrangements, praised them, bargained over them. No one had ever said what he just said. He slid a card across the table. "We're launching a home line. Our mock-ups feel manufactured. If you're open to consulting, I'd like something that remembers rooms have hearts." "You don't even know me," she said, but her fingers closed around the card. "I know you drew sunlight into a floor plan," he said. "That's not nothing." He came to her shop the next day. No suit, sleeves rolled, he touched a bouquet of wild things. Sweet peas leaning into chamomile, Queen Anne's lace a little unruly, and smiled like a man seeing a lake for the first time after months of glass conference tables. "Honest flowers," Nia said, suddenly shy. "They're not perfect. They just tell the truth." "Truth is underpriced," he murmured. They talk color stories and seasons, candles and linens, how fragrance can suggest memory without stealing the room. He listened as if listening were work he had chosen. He found the photo of Nia with an older woman. "My grandmother," Nia said. "She taught me names. She said flowers speak when words fail." "Wise," Cassian said, and set the frame down like something living. At the door he hesitated. "Dinner, tomorrow. Not business, just the part where people look at stars and remember they're small." She almost laughed at the line and didn't, because he wasn't selling it. He was asking it. He cooked. Of course he cooked. Salmon crisped in a pan, lemon and dill, pasta that behaved. They ate on a terrace that lifted the city like a drawing. He told her about a Massachusetts town where winter bit hard, about a mother who worked 2 jobs and taught him to finish what he started. She told him about saving tips in a jar labeled keys until one day the jar became a lease. He asked why flowers, and she said, "Because they bloom and they go and they bloom again. They forgive endings." He looked at her as if that answer put something back where something had been missing. At the curb, he lifted her hand and pressed his mouth to her palm, a small old-world thing that landed with the weight of a vow. In bed, later, staring at the ceiling of her very small life, Nia felt a hinge turn. The suitcase had been a mistake. Everything after it was not. When the contract arrived, it wasn't charity. It was fair, clean, and short. "You'll work with me directly," he said in a call that slid under her skin. Fewer doors to knock on. She brought 5 concepts the following week, nervous and stubborn, and wearing a dress the color of confidence. The marketing leads were crisp and polite and full of phrases that felt like air. One man said, "By mom, our brand voice is aspirational." Another said, "We need repeatable warmth." Cassian said nothing at first, only watched Nia like a man reading a map and recognizing the road he'd been looking for. "We'll run with 1, 3, and 5, he said at last, "and we'll keep their edges." Afterward, when the room had emptied, he stood too close and the world thinned. "You did well," he said, voice low. "Thank you for bringing a pulse." "Thank you for hearing it," she said, and the air between them changed shape. The first headline arrived 2 days later, a grainy photo from a park. "Billionaire with mystery woman." Her phone buzzed on the counter beside ribbon and shears. She wanted to be angry at the world for shrinking her to a caption. Instead, she texted him, "I'm not used to being watched." He replied almost instantly, "I can't promise quiet. I can promise shelter." She read the words twice and decided not to run. New York was noise in a tailored suit, and launch week turned the volume up. The penthouse had windows that swallowed whole blocks of skylight. Nia unpacked in a guest room that had its own view and its own silence. Cassian's life moved in schedules. Creative check-ins, venue walkthrough, investor dinner, press hour, board breakfast. He carved odd-shaped spaces inside it and filled them with her. Before the first meeting, he took her to the roof at sunrise. The city was a quilt of light and possibility. "This is where I remember what I wanted," he said, before wanting learned to talk like spreadsheets. She wanted to reach for his hand and didn't, because Marcus was waiting downstairs with bullet points, and because the world had eyes. The creative team surprised her. They were makers beneath the gloss. Victoria, a director with a quiet laugh, leaned in over Nia's photographs. "You anchor the rooms," she said. "You keep them from floating away." The words slid into Nia's bones like warmth. They walked the venue next. A warehouse had been cut into vignettes, a linen-soft bedroom, a kitchen that invited elbows on marble, a living room that could hold a Sunday afternoon. Nia's arrangements were there, rolled, asymmetrical, breathing. A trio of investors drifted past, the kind of men who wore certainty like a watch. "Charming," one said. "A bit rustic?" The word hovered like a smirk. Cassian's jaw ticked. "We are not staging catalog pages," he said. "We are staging a life." That night at dinner, a reporter smiled knife-sweet and asked Nia how it felt to date a man who lives several lifetimes above your tax bracket. Nia kept her voice even. "I make rooms kinder," she said. "That's the bracket I care about." The reporter blinked and changed tack. Marcus materialized and guided the conversation elsewhere. After, in the car, Nia stared at her hands. "I don't know if I can be a story for people who don't know me." "You don't have to be," Cassian said. "You can be mine." He meant it in the simplest way and the largest. It scared her and settled her. Both. The launch day was a tide. Cameras flashed, music breathed, people said the right things in the right order. Nia stood near a window watching guests orbit the rooms she had grounded. Cassian, in a charcoal suit that made strangers step back, found her with his eyes every 10 minutes and softened by degrees. When it was over, applause scattered like confetti and the warehouse exhaled. Back at the penthouse, the door shut and the outer world fell away. He loosened his tie and leaned in the kitchen doorway as if the whole height of him relied on the frame. "You were the part that felt like a person," he said. "Everything else was theater." "Your theater," she teased, trying for light. "My weather," he said, and crossed the room in 3 strides. He kissed her like a rival, then gentler, then not at all, just his forehead to hers. "Stay, not because we're photographed together. Stay because you like who you are when we're in the same room." "I do," she whispered. And then, because honesty had become the only kind of currency that mattered between them, added, "But I need you to like who you are when your phone is off." He powered it down and slid it into the drawer. "Teach me how," he said simply. Teaching looked like small things: groceries on a Tuesday, a walk where they named street trees badly, coffee sipped without emails. It looked like him standing at her sink rinsing mugs, sleeves wet to the elbow, laughing at nothing. It looked like her not apologizing for joy. The articles kept coming. Some were kind, in the thin, condescending way the internet can be. Some were not. Nia learned to stop reading comments. Cassian learned what silence costs a person like her and filled it with the presence of Mifron. When he forgot and vanished into work for a day and a half, she didn't scold. She named the feeling. "It makes me small," she said. He wrote the words down on the inside of his calendar and moved meetings. He tried to fix things only once, emailed her a list of 3 storefronts perfect for a cafe expansion and a banker's number. She closed her laptop and looked at him until he looked back. "I need to build, not be carried." He didn't argue. He deleted the email while she watched. "I want to stand nearby while you do it," he said. "That's all." Spring softened Atlanta. Petal and stems spilled light into the sidewalk like water. On a Thursday afternoon, an old customer cried softly over an anniversary bouquet while Nia wrapped stems in brown paper and ribbon. She knew how to be useful. She knew where beauty lived. At closing, Cassian arrived with takeout and the look that meant he had something and wasn't sure how to give it. "Walk?" he asked. And they took the long way to the park, past porches and Dee's and a toddler insisting leaves were stars. He stopped beside a bench that knew a lot about people's days. "We met because the world is messy," he said. "Because an airport does what an airport does. I don't want the neat version of this. I want the one where we make choices." "What does your choice look like?" she asked. "It looks like delegating without guilt. It looks like New York some weeks and Atlanta most weeks. It looks like me learning to leave a room without checking who noticed. It looks like you drawing sunlight into bigger floor plans." Her throat tightened. "And when the noise gets loud?" "I make walls," he said. "Not around you, around us." He reached into his bag and set a navy suitcase by her feet. New but familiar. "I thought you might like one without someone else's initials," he said, and his mouth tipped because he had rehearsed something lighter and the heavy thing was still coming. Inside the suitcase under tissue, a small velvet box waited. The world narrowed to its hinge. He didn't kneel. He stepped closer, palms open like a promise. "I won't ask for forever tonight," he said. "I'll ask for yes to the next true thing. Yes to building and arguing kindly and getting it wrong and trying again. Yes to the version of love that isn't a headline." She laughed then, a wet sound because of course the ring was simple and right and not the point. "Yes," she said, and the word felt like doors. Later, on a small beach far from any camera, they opened her old journal to a blank page. He drew a box labeled Morning Light. She added a counter with a bowl for free stems. He sketched a back room with a chair where a man who used to forget could sit and remember. It was the ugliest drawing either of them had made and the best plan either of them had kept. The airport had offered a mistake. They had made it into a map. And when the next headline tried to tell them who they were, they already knew.